We begin in the U.S., where court records suggest the man suspected of an apparent assassination attempt on Donald Trump was at his Florida golf course for more than 11 hours before he was cited by authorities. 58-year-old Ryan Wesley Routh appeared in court where he was charged with federal gun crimes. Routh was arrested on a highway near Palm City, about 45 minutes drive from West Palm Beach, where the incident took place. Police recovered an AK-style firearm and 2 bags from the vicinity of Trump's golf course. Kimberly Halkett is standing by at the White House. First, though, let's go to Phil Lavelle, who's in West Palm Beach, Florida, following the latest developments out of there. What more do we know about Ryan Routh following his court appearance, Phil?
Well, we're finding out more and more as the minutes go by. Bits of information are being released by different bodies. It turns out that Routh had quite a prolific online presence. In fact, he'd been interviewed on television as well as writing a book. So there's lots for both journalists and investigators to pore over. I'm going to go into that in just a second. But first, let me just tell you what's happening here today. So he has been charged now with 2 firearms offences. One of them is possession of a firearm by a felon. One of them is possession of a firearm with a serial number that has been obliterated. I'm going to show you some footage of the dramatic moment that he was arrested. Now, this happened on the I-95. That is a large motorway, a freeway here in Florida. He was arrested in a place called Martin County. Officers managed to pull him over, block off the road for a good time. While they got out of the car, they had guns drawn and they made him back up before he was frisked, and then he was laid on the floor and he was taken into custody. But as I say, we're going back to what has happened here today. They're poring over all of these social media posts, the fact that we now know that he was a prominent supporter of Ukraine in its battle against Russia, that he had been interviewed about the fact that he had tried to recruit fighters to go to Ukraine to fight on behalf of the Ukrainian people, that he's actually also a former voter of Donald Trump. He voted for Donald Trump once in the past, and it said that he deeply regretted that decision. And of course, now that we know, he is also the man, the suspect that police believe lay there in that golf course waiting for the former president in what the FBI are now investigating as a second assassination attempt in just as many months.
Okay, so he's a disappointed Trump voter. That's interesting. Or a Trump voter with buyer's remorse, I guess. What more do we know about the incident itself?
Well, there have been a lot of questions about how he knew Donald Trump would be on the golf course yesterday. It turns out that it probably wasn't luck, that he'd actually lain in wait for the former president for some 12 hours. Phone records that have been released by law enforcement here say that his phone was pinging, was spotted in that vicinity at around 2 o'clock in the morning. And of course, it was a little before 2 o'clock in the afternoon that this incident occurred. Now, in terms of where it took place, this is not the Trump resort here at Mar-a-Lago. This is where Donald Trump lives at Mar-a-Lago. This was actually his golf course, which is about 15 minutes drive or so away. And you would think, being a former president, that it would be a highly secure area. It is not. Yes, it is a private members golf club. You can't just walk in off the street if you're not a member. But we've seen in the past members of the public who've managed to get onto this golf course, to get selfies with the former president, to get photographs with the former president. It is next to a number of main roads. In particular, holes 5 and 6, where this incident took place, are by 2 intersecting main roads. So the fact that somebody was able to get onto this golf course in the middle of the night is perhaps not unsurprising. In fact, it probably would have been fairly easy at that time of the night to get onto this golf course and then lay in wait. And of course, we know that it was the fact that that barrel of the rifle was pointing out through a hedge. That is what alerted the Secret Services to him. It wasn't the fact that he fired at the former president. It's not believed that any shots were fired by him. In fact, officials have said he didn't get the chance to fire any shots because Secret Service officials spotted him and then they responded accordingly.
And Phil, before I let you go, what else is happening today, this afternoon? I mean, Donald Trump is behind you in Mar-a-Lago.
Yeah, so he was here already because he's actually launching a cryptocurrency this evening. So he was planning to be here. And we now know that he's going to be visited by a number of people. He's actually invited the law enforcement officers, the local sheriff, and various others to come to Mar-a-Lago so he can thank them personally. He did that already last night in the early hours of the morning. He put a post on Truth Social, his social network, where he thanked them all. The Secret Service boss is coming here. He will first go to the golf course where he's going to inspect the scene. He's going to talk to officers there. He's going to look at the forensic evidence. Then he's going to come here and meet the former president. You remember the previous Secret Service boss had to resign after that other failed assassination attempt back in July. But we now know that the sheriff has also been invited, the sheriff of Martin County, which is where the arrest took place. Here's what he had to say a little while ago.
Thank God we found that car, and I think we're able to give former President Trump a peace of mind. He's already invited the men and women that were involved in the stop to go to Mar-a-Lago and be thankful for what they did.
So that's everything we're learning over in West Palm Beach. Just before we head over to the White House for Kimberly Halkett's reporting there, this is how the Vice President, Kamala Harris, reacted. She said, quote, "I am deeply disturbed by the possible assassination attempt of former President Donald Trump today. As we gather facts, I will be clear. I condemn political violence. We all must do our part to ensure that this incident does not lead to more political violence." So Kimberly Halkett is our White House correspondent. Kimberly, how is the Biden administration handling this?
Well, before we get to how the Biden administration is handling this, I should tell you that Donald Trump has given an interview to the Fox Network's digital arm, and in it he is directly blaming Kamala Harris, the vice president, and his rival in the upcoming election, as well as President Joe Biden, for this latest attempt on his life. He says in this interview that he believes the rhetoric of the Biden-Harris team is what caused the second attempt on his life. He says that the gunman acted on their rhetoric, and their rhetoric is causing me to be shot at when I am the one who is going to save the country. They, being Kamala Harris and Joe Biden, are the ones who are destroying the country, both from the inside and out. They are the real threat, the enemy from within. So some very strong words from the former president, who believes that it is this heated political rhetoric that is responsible for the attacks on his life. Now, in terms of what is being done about it,
wait, well, Kimberly, hold on.
I can tell you that
pause for a second, Kimberly. Let's stay on this topic because I was unaware of this interview by Donald Trump, right? So he's now directly blaming he's now directly blaming his adversary in this upcoming presidential election. I wanted to ask you about the politics of this. I think we have our answer to how the Trump team is going to handle this politically. For them, it's a win, and they are definitely going to use this. That has already begun. How do you see the Harris team responding to this? It's I would say it's quite delicate for them.
It is delicate for them. But, as recently as the weekend, there are examples of at least President Biden, accusing the former president of inciting violence. As recently as the presidential debate, there are examples of Kamala Harris accusing Donald Trump of being extreme. I can tell you I've sat in press briefings where the White House press secretary, Karine Jean-Pierre, has called any supporter of Donald Trump a MAGA Republican, using those terms in the pejorative. In other words, that they are negative in connotation, that anyone that is a supporter of Donald Trump is, far right, and that those people are unhinged, that they are deranged, that they are extreme. In other words, the tens of millions, more than 74 million voters who supported Donald Trump are essentially outcasts in American society. That's about half the voting public. So Donald Trump is basically arguing that he is a champion of those people. So that is certainly something that Republicans will capitalize on. Now, in terms of official statements, you've heard it from the vice president and the president of the United States. They do not condone political violence. But at the same time, as they're saying that on one side of their mouth, on the other side, they are accusing Donald Trump and his supporters of very, very extreme political views. And Donald Trump is now accusing back, saying that because of those statements, he has had 2 attempts on his life.
So if we go back then to what was going to be the question at the top, Kimberly, I mean, it's become apparent from everything that you've said that what Biden says and does from here on in, not to mention Harris, of course, but Biden is the sitting president. What he does could really matter on this topic. What is the Biden administration doing regarding Trump's safety and security detail?
Well, there's no question that Joe Biden is experienced when it comes to leading the country, that he has decades of experience when it comes to Congress and how money is spent. And he was very clear as he left the White House that he believes there is a major lapse in security. This is a man who's going to need that very level of security once he leaves the White House. And if he believes that Trump supporters don't like him and are blaming him, he is going to want the very same protection. So he has said very clearly that there needs to be a further allocation of resources. There has been a demand, a bipartisan demand, meaning both Democrats and Republicans, for an emergency hearing to make sure that there is the necessary funding. And there's already a $3 billion allocation for resources. Now they're asking for even more to make sure that there is the manpower necessary to not only protect the current president of the United States, but the former presidents of the United States as well.
Okay, Kimberly Halkett, great to talk to you today. Thank you very much. That's Al Jazeera's White House correspondent, Kimberly Halkett.
Make sure to subscribe to our channel to get the latest news from Al Jazeera.